Hello and welcome to Face to Face. This week our guest is Stan Dzbik. Stan is with the Victoria Labour Council, and we're going to start off by asking Stan exactly what the Victoria Labour Council is.
The Victoria Labour Council is the political action wing, you could say, of organised labour in Victoria. We represent 26 unions and over 50 locals. Well over 26,000 people are affiliated to the Victoria Labour Council.
So it's a fairly, I'd say 26,000 people affiliated to it. Do they, like for example, I'm affiliated to it because I'm a member of the BCGEU.
That's right.
And yet, until now, I didn't know.
Yeah, and union members are welcome to come as guests to Labour Council meetings, which are third Wednesday of every month, except July and August.
Third Wednesday of every month. Where are the meetings?
They're at the BCGU auditorium on Douglas Street.
And if people go, are they going to be happy they came? Is it kind of an interesting thing to attend?
Yeah, we try to have interesting guests for every meeting and talk about the current political situation. Might be municipal or provincial, sometimes federal as well. Anything that affects people in Victoria or BC.
So who would a guest be, for example, going back a week or two?
We've had, in the past, we've had MLAs coming, like Maureen Karagiannis. We've had Carol James come, Rob Fleming. We've also had our recently elected NDP MP Randall Garrison show up. We've had guest speakers talk about a living wage campaign that we're trying to set up here in Victoria, and has been quite successful in other parts of the world, like in London and in Vancouver. And in certain cities in the States, I believe, also have a living wage campaign. We try to have a fairly wide range of people that are understand labour issues and how it affects not just politics, but the public as well.
So this isn't then just an administrative meeting. This is a meeting where people can come and actually get some hopefully interesting information.
Yeah, we try to do a bit of both. There's some information, then of course we have to do the business as well. So.
Okay, so once again, third Wednesday of every month?
Except July and August.
At the BCGEU building on Douglas. You can look it up in the phone book and get the address. What time do they start?
7 o'clock.
Okay, and you guys must have a website.
Yes, we do. It's victorialabour.ca.
So victorialabour.ca, and I guess if people go to the website, they'll get information about the group and what's coming up at the next meeting.
That's correct.
Okay, victorialabour.ca. And folks, what's happening in the union movement has suddenly really come into the news, in part, I guess, because of the recent majority government of Stephen Harper that was sort of voted in, and since then to, strikes or lockouts with Air Canada and the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. So maybe we can talk about all of that, starting off with a Stephen Harper majority government.
As a union person, I'm somewhat disappointed that the Conservatives won a majority. It's one of these things that we feel that Stephen Harper does have a antipathy towards organised labour, and we believe that he will be doing some sort of actions to hinder unions in collective bargaining, and just basically they're running their business, because I think that the Conservatives feel that the union's time has passed, and that we should just be happy that we have jobs and shut up and go to work and take the pay that they give you.
I think that's a not bad estimation, not only of the Conservative government, but of big business, a lot of big business in this country. In general, I mean, that is the message that's being put out. It was put out. Can I just show this?
Certainly.
In the Victoria News, if you take a look in the Victoria News quite recently, here in June, as this is being filmed, quite recently we see a story: the value of unions is waning, and this is just, dare I say it, corporate propaganda put out in a very right-wing newspaper called the Victoria News, and I don't know if it was carried in the rest of the black press newspapers as well. But this is the message that corporate Canada is putting out. They do it maybe a little less blatantly when they do it on CTV, but it's all the corporate media. And right now, unions are under attack. I mean, would you agree with that statement?
I would say that even more so now that we do have a majority government that isn't really in favor of organized labor, that we're going to see the rights of working people challenged.
Yeah, I think there is a split between unionized and non-unionized workers, and I think in part the unions could do a lot better job of not only putting their message out to non-unionized workers, but stopping the message that's coming from the media, which is that, hey, unions have got it so good and so wonderful, they're doing so well, and it's coming out of you if you're a small business person or a non-unionized worker. But really, that's not the problem in this country. The problem in this country is that all the money is going up to the people and corporations at the top, and then they pit us against one another to fight for the scraps.
It sure seems that way. Unfortunately, I think there's the message that we get a lot of is that unions are greedy and selfish, and a lot of people take this from the media when they're watching the news. There's an emphasis on they're striking again for higher wages, or they're striking for this, or they're striking for that, when 93% of collective bargaining is completed without a strike. So it's pretty rare for unions to actually go out on strike, and strikes are a part of collective bargaining. They're a legally recognized form of bargaining where the workers can withdraw their labor from the marketplace in order to try to get a better deal for their wages. And likewise, companies can also do the same thing. They can lock their workers out in order to force a bargaining deal, which is something we've just seen with the Postal, Canada Post.
Which started with a series of rotating strikes and then was followed up by a lockout. Now, as this is being filmed, which is June 20th, that whole Canada Post thing is in flux. When you're watching this, we'll be a lot further down the road, so we'll see exactly where it is. Interesting, you mentioned Mr. Harper won a majority government, and of course he did, but as we all know, he did not get a majority of the votes. He got about 40%, a bit more or a bit less, I can't remember.
Yeah, you got 40% of 60%, so if you do the rough math, that's around 25% of eligible voters voted for Stephen Harper. Now, that doesn't mean that his government is illegitimate, but it certainly doesn't mean that the system works very well. I mean, I think if we had a system that was more representative of the voter, then the results would be different.
Yeah, and another big problem in our system is that once a Conservative government is elected, it doesn't really matter what all the other Conservative members of Parliament think or what all the voters who voted Conservative think. All the power ends up in the hands, basically, of one person, the Prime Minister. And that is one of the biggest problems with our democracy, is that in a case like this, somebody like Stephen Harper gets all the power. Well, we didn't vote for Stephen Harper. We voted for 100 and some odd members of Parliament. In fact, 308 members of Parliament. They're all irrelevant. More and more, the one person has the power.
Yeah, unfortunately, if people are unhappy with him, they'll have to wait until the next election to express their dissatisfaction.
And that's, to me, that isn't the way to run a country. We shouldn't vote and then the government have 4 or 5 years to do whatever they want, whether it's what we want or not. Like, for example, let's not go into the war in Libya, but something like that. Or even his decision, Mr. Harper's decision to remove the per vote dollar amount that every party got from the Treasury in order to fund the political parties. That was brought in by Jean Chrétien not that long ago. And how much is it? $2 a vote? Something like that?
About that.
Yeah, so let's say it's $2 a vote. So you get 1 million votes, you get $2 million. Maybe it should be less. But to remove it completely means that the political parties once again have no money except for what comes from basically people with money.
Yeah, well, I guess it remains to be seen how that law will be changed. I know that the government subsidy for it is going to be reduced slowly, and depending on how the law is changed, either the parties will be allowed to solicit for greater sums of money from individuals or corporations, or it'll stay the same, and they'll only be allowed a certain amount of money per person. And I'm not sure if that's necessarily a good thing, because during the election, the way it was presented was that the government is supporting political parties, but they are in any case, because whenever you make a donation, you get a large percentage of it back on your income taxes. So that's not going to stop. So I don't see what the difference is by giving them a subsidy per vote, and then also giving a tax break to people who support the parties.
Yeah. And it isn't the kind of decision that should be in the hands of one person, namely Mr. Stephen Harper or whoever the Prime Minister is. I don't know if they should have the power to change our electoral system like that, because it's our system, not theirs. And should they be allowed to change it for their benefit without even asking the rest of us?
Well, you have to admit, though, that they did run on that policy. So I guess the people that voted for the Conservatives agreed with it, or I guess the majority of them agreed with it. If they voted, maybe they voted for other reasons as well. But there's nothing really we can do about it because of the way the system is. So we got the 40% of 25% of people voted for him, and now they have a majority. So.
Yeah, but I would think that probably people voted for Mr. Harper for 1,000 different reasons. They may not even have known about this one. And if they did, it may have been one of 100 reasons that made them vote for him, but maybe they like it, maybe they don't. Maybe they've heard new information that makes them think, well, maybe he shouldn't. But those are the kinds of things we should be thinking about. So right now, in mid-June, there are 2 strikes have been happening. Well, I shouldn't say that. There was Air Canada went on strike. Canadian Union of Postal Workers were doing rotating strikes and then were locked out. And that's where we are now. Can you tell us what was the main issue in those 2 situations, or if it was different for each, maybe you can tell us that as well.
Well, the one major similarity between the both is the pension plans that workers had working for both employers. Air Canada has had a defined benefit plan, and now they're trying to change it to defined contribution, which is really puts all the risk on the workers, because defined benefit means that you're guaranteed a certain amount of income after you retire, and defined contribution, you may get a certain amount of income, but it all depends what the markets do. And as we know, 3 years ago the markets tanked, and people that had RSPs and were relying on their RSPs ended up not having quite as much money as they thought they would have. So I think the defined benefit plan really, what pensions are supposed to be is deferred income. So rather than getting paid a larger sum of money while you're working, you defer a certain amount of money to the pension plan, and then you collect that when you retire. Now, if it's a defined benefit, you know how much money you're going to have when you retire, and you don't have to worry about the vagaries of the market.
Now, it may be a large amount or it may be a small amount. I don't know how that works, but whatever. I guess it depends on you and your employer and what you decide to agree on as things go along.
Well, and there's a formula for pensions that you have to work a certain length of time and contribute a certain amount of money, and the employer contributes a certain amount of money, and at the end you get a percentage of your salary for retirement. So it's not a freebie by any means for the workers. And part of the problem with defined benefits is that the employers, when the economy was going really well and the markets were doing great, they were able to take a holiday on paying their contribution into the pension plan, because the way the pension plans are structured, you only have to pay so much money to get this defined benefit at the end. So when times were good, they were taking a holiday. When times turned around and the economy went down, all of a sudden they were complaining that they didn't have the money to put into the pension plan. So who gets hurt in the end? It's the workers that get hurt in the end. I mean,
so in other words, the companies, and this is widespread in the United States and in Canada as well, the companies never put in the amount of money they were supposed to put in to build the pension up. The workers put in their money, and in some cases, I believe that money too was somehow taken out and things done with it.
Well, unfortunately, with the way bankruptcy laws are, the pension plan holders aren't necessarily the first in line. It's they're usually the last in line. So people like in Nortel, they ended up not having a pension when all the dust settled.
Now, the corporate line in all this is, wouldn't we all love to have a defined benefit plan? And yes, we would.
Yeah.
And why not? I mean, that's the kind of thing that unions, I hope, are fighting for, not just for union workers, but for everybody. Why not? We deserve it. I mean, if there's no wealth left in the end, then we're not going to have it, for sure. But if there is wealth, why should all of it be flowing to the people at the top, and everybody else is told that, well, there's none for you? Wouldn't we all like to have it?
Well, the irony is that most of the CEOs and upper management in these large corporations, they have defined benefit plans, and their defined benefit plans aren't being withdrawn and changed to defined contribution. And it seems to be it's okay for them, right? They make their millions of dollars a year, and then they retire on hundreds of thousands, if not millions, as well, and that's perfectly fine. But for the ordinary worker that has an average standard of living, I guess they expect them to take the hit when they retire. And part of the problem is that what they're doing is they're offloading this on the taxpayer, because these people, if they're retired and they don't have any money, who's going to support them? The Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security and the Guaranteed Income Supplement, all these things will have to take effect in order to support people that don't have pension plans.
Now, it's worth noting what Stan said here, which is that CEOs, a lot of them, maybe, well, I can't say all of them, but certainly a lot of them, have defined benefit pension plans. And yet, the media, which represents these CEOs, keeps saying, well, wouldn't we all love to have defined benefit pension plans? We can't afford them anymore. So in other words, yes, they're affordable for them, for the CEOs and the people at the top, but they're not affordable for anybody else. And they pit us, one against the other, in a fight to try to get rid of the defined benefit pension plans for those who have them, by making other people angry about it, instead of what we should have in this country, I think, as well as we can afford it, is everyone should be having a decent pension plan. Why not?
Well, it's ironic again that here we are, we're in this sort of conundrum with pensions, and we have the corporations trying to go from a defined benefit to a defined contribution, and at the same time we have with the CPP, we have the NDP is trying to get the Canada Pension Plan levels increased, and by raising your deductions for a Canada Pension Plan by a small percentage, people can have a guaranteed income during retirement that will actually carry them through their retirement. And a lot of people who don't have pensions will be relying on this. And yet the Conservative government is fighting tooth and nail against it. They've come up with their own plan, which is a private voluntary plan that you have to contribute to, and I'm not sure of all the details, but I imagine that the management fees are considerably higher than Canada Pension Plan, and none of this is actually going to help the average person. But it doesn't seem to matter the way things are spun right now. The people are, one group of people is set against the other. You have the people that don't work in a union environment complaining that, the unions have it too good and they got these cushy pensions. I mean, well, they should be fighting for the same thing. Everybody should be able to retire without having to worry about where their next check is going to come or whether or not they're going to have enough money to buy food. It's not right that you spend your life working and then have to be stressed out during your retirement.
Yeah. what we're seeing is really, again, is that the wealth is flowing upwards to the people at the top who have so much now. I mean, we don't read about it that much or hear about it that much, but that's one of the big stories, is our nation is becoming more and more unequal. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and this pension issue is just another example of that. And we don't have to do it. The money is there. We're not going to be retiring on a pension that's going to allow us maybe to be summering or wintering in Hawaii, but at least so you don't have to worry about keeping a roof over your head and food on the table and being able to go out for a cup of coffee when you want to. That's a lot of what people want. But even that now is too much, according to the people who run this country, and I'm talking about the corporations and their politicians, and the way the media spins all of these issues. Because, how often do you hear this kind of thing being discussed anywhere in the media from this point of view? What were some of the other issues, if you know them, regarding the Canadian Union of Postal Workers issue and the Air Canada issue?
Well, it kind of ties into the defined benefit pensions, and also they're trying to have a different set of standards, basically, for new hires. If they can't take away the defined benefit plan from the current employees, they don't want to carry it any further with new employees, and new hires will have to go to a different system, the defined contribution plan, and also the new employees would have to start at a lower rate of pay than the current employees. And we've seen that also happen in places like GM, and where, to my mind, the union let down the new people coming in by allowing them to start at a lower rate of pay. I mean, in this country, we've had equal pay for equal work, and also equal pay for work of equal value. And now it bothers me to see, two people working side by side and one person being paid substantially less than another. There's no reason for that.
And that's happening right through the union movement. Basically, what's happening is wages are being ratcheted down. So in the past, somebody would start, let's say, $15 to $20 an hour. Now that same person is starting at $12 to $16 an hour, even though it's years later. And with inflation, the money is worth less to begin with. But that's happening throughout. And the argument always is there's a deficit. The government doesn't have enough money. Taxes are, too high. But in fact, the people at the top are paying less taxes. The corporations keep getting tax cuts. And as that funnels its way down through the system, it means that people in unionized and non-unionized jobs keep getting less. And that's the reason why our society is going as it is. Now, the Canadian Union of Postal Workers situation is kind of interesting, because one of the arguments made by the politicians and the media is that post office isn't of any value anyways anymore, so why are people getting paid well for working there, even though everybody should be paid well? But at the same time, they're arguing that it's so important that we have to legislate them back to work because the economy is being hurt.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, because they attack the postal workers is who they're really attacking. They're attacking postal workers for being overpaid, but you have to remember that these people are hauling a considerable amount of weight on their back day in, day out, sun, rain, snow, ice, and doing it for a number of years. So making, and I'm not sure off the top of my head what they're earning, but it's under $50,000 a year for the top rate. So it's certainly not exorbitant wages for them. So they're not being overpaid, unlike the CEO of Canada Post. But at the same time, the right-wing pundits like to say, "Oh, well, we don't need a post office anymore. We deliver all our stuff through email. We don't need to have to worry about these people carrying it around." And then they turn around and legislate them back to work, or try to legislate them back to work, because it's so important that the economy will collapse without the post office. So now, which one is true? Why are they denigrating these workers on the one hand, and then forcing them back to work because they're so important?
And that's exactly the whole story. People are on different sides of this issue, but one thing that's important is that the media should be presenting all sides of the issue, including the union side, and we don't hear so much. We get certainly the other arguments, the corporate arguments, and the the post office argument. Now, the post office is a crown corporation, but the ultimate goal is certainly to privatize it. I mean, that's never mentioned again, but it's happening in other places in the world, and I'm sure that, in fact, I've read that there is a move to privatize Canada Post, and I don't know much about it, but I'm sure that's also taking place.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. I do think that they would like to sell it to a large corporation. I mean, but I don't know the details, so we'll have to wait and see what happens.
How about with Air Canada? Do you know what the issues were with Air Canada workers?
Again, similar thing. It was the pensions, and I believe it was also the new hires were being asked to start at a lower rate of pay, and there are other issues as well, though I'm not really familiar with them. But
and the new hires are just the young people of today. I mean, are they going to have decent jobs that will allow them to live their lives, raise their families, and retire at the end? Are any of us going to have that? You know, take a look, folks, at where our country is going. And, you know, inequality of income is one, in fact, perhaps the most fundamental issue in terms of having a good society. It is so important in terms of health, longevity, crime and drug, all the issues seem to revolve around the issue of equality. I heard somebody speaking about this not too long ago, and it just knocked my socks off because I'd never even heard it discussed. And yet, this was a professor from England who had the stats. There they were. And we could just have a much better society if everything was a little more equal. We're going in the other direction.
Well, and I think without going into details, I mean, if you look at the rankings of countries as far as being the best societies or most prosperous or highest GDP, and there are different ways to determine what is considered a healthy society. The countries that normally come out on top as far as a standard of living seem to be the Northern European countries like Sweden and Norway. And they have a much lower difference between their highest paid and lowest paid, and they have more social programs. They're unionized too, like, you know, a large percentage of the workers there are unionized, and it just, I don't see why our country isn't aspiring to be more like those societies rather than trying to go back to you know, the 19th century where unions didn't have any rights or weren't allowed to exist at all, and you had all the power held by a few individuals and their friends in the government.
I think maybe that's the most important thing that we've talked about, is there is a different direction we can go in, and the Northern European direction seems to me the best. A system where there are more unionized workers, unions are stronger, but in general, people are paid more. There's more democracy, and there's less of a rich-poor gap. Isn't that what a lot of us would like to be working towards? I think so, but we don't seem to have a voice.
Yeah, I don't understand why that isn't the goal for our government. I mean, and those states, even though they are somewhat socialized, they're not socialistic, and you have large companies, you know, expanding around the world, like IKEA and Volvo and Saab and different companies from Northern Europe that seem to do really well, even though they are paying good wages for their workers at home, and they have good benefits, and the countries don't seem to be affected at all by this economic crisis that has been ongoing now for the last 3 years, that we keep hearing about how different countries in Europe are ready to go bankrupt.
So there you have it, folks. There's an entirely different direction that we can be going in. So we've talked about two things today. One is kind of the day-to-day issues that are going on with our federal government, a little bit of the provincial government, and the two big labor issues that are happening right now are labor management issues, which is Canadian Union of Postal Workers and Air Canada, but also the issue of where we want this country to go. And I think maybe what Stan mentioned is something we should all be thinking about, because we can be going in a very different and much more positive, I think, direction, which is the direction of the countries of Northern Europe. Higher taxes, especially higher taxes on the rich, or at least the rich paying a fair share and the corporations paying a fair share, and workers doing better.
Fair taxes, that's the way to go. Everyone contributes to society, and everyone gets the benefits.
We've been talking to Stan Dzbik of the Victoria Labour Council. Any last thing you'd like to say?
Well, I guess we have a new government federally. We have a new leader provincially, and a new premier. So it's going to be interesting times ahead. Hopefully, that's not a negative thing, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and it's up to all of us to know the issues and push. There is a positive direction, so let's keep going that way. Thank you very much for watching Face to Face.